So, take a look at this for a moment. When those photos of Camilla aboard a multi-million-dollar luxury yacht leaked to the press, most people expected the usual palace routine. A brief, cold statement from communications officers claiming it was a purely private family holiday, a couple of defensive leaks to friendly tabloids, and then a quiet waiting game until the news cycle moved on to something else. But now, watch this, because what actually happened behind closed doors was something entirely different. The very next morning, Prince William did not call a press advisor. He did not issue a defensive clarification. Instead, the heir to the throne reportedly summoned a private, off-the-record meeting inside his personal residence at Kensington Palace. He walked into that room carrying a thick leather folder packed with printed financial records, port logs, and maritime asset registers, effectively launching a real-time palace audit on the senior ranks of the royal family. That is the single detail that changes everything about this story. We are not just looking at a sun-drenched Mediterranean vacation or a bad week of PR. What we are watching unfold is a decisive, quiet power shift that has been quietly building behind the scenes for months, and it has now finally broken out into the open. William did not show up to smooth things over. He showed up asking who knew about the arrangement, when it was approved, and why it was kept off the official records. Before we dive straight into the paper trail, the corporate shell companies, and the staggering internal contradictions that are shaking the institution, take a quick second to hit the like button and subscribe to Prime Royal Central. Here at Prime Royal Central, we strip away the PR gloss to analyze the real power moves reshaping the British monarchy. Now, okay, stay with me, because to understand why William took such extreme action, you have to look closely at the vessel itself. The yacht involved in this scandal is the Esperanza III. On paper, it is a Malta-registered superyacht, but its true ownership is hidden behind a complex web of corporate entities, including a holding company based in Luxembourg and financial ties to a private investment manager in Switzerland. In the world of ultra-high net worth offshore finance, that kind of multi-jurisdictional structure is fairly standard for tax planning and privacy. But when you are the Queen Consort of the United Kingdom, accepting open-ended luxury hospitality from an asset intentionally structured to be opaque creates a massive institutional risk. Even if every single penny was accounted for and no rules were legally broken, the appearance of taking undisclosed perks from anonymous financiers completely undermines the public trust that holds the constitutional monarchy together. And this is where the conflict between William and Camilla becomes intense. This trip did not happen in a vacuum. For over a year, Prince William had been aggressively pushing for strict, unyielding internal oversight regarding gifts, private travel, and external hospitality. He had made it abundantly clear to all senior royals that the era of accepting favors from wealthy international backers was over. He wanted clear lines drawn to ensure no one could ever accuse the royal household of offering privileged access or commercial favors. So when Camilla boarded that yacht, it was not just an optical blunder. To William, it looked like a direct challenge to the new standards of governance he was trying to establish for the future of the crown. One side of the palace was working to enforce complete transparency, while the other was behaving as if the old, unscrutinized ways of doing business still applied. That fundamental clash in philosophy was already simmering, but the exact timeline of how this trip unfolded was what finally blew the doors off the hinges. Take a look at the calendar from early July 2026. Because the contrast between what the public was shown and what was happening behind the scenes is stark. While Camilla was cruising through the Mediterranean aboard an offshore registered vessel, William and Catherine were carrying out a grueling schedule of low-key, ground-level royal duties across the United Kingdom. They were visiting a children's hospice in Birmingham, meeting with military veterans near Edinburgh, and reinforcing an image of an institution dedicated strictly to public service. Then came the turning point. William did not find out about Camilla's luxury getaway by picking up a Sunday tabloid or seeing a trending hashtag on social media. According to well-placed palace sources, an internal contact within the royal household realized the severity of the situation and reached out directly to Kensington Palace before a single photograph was leaked to the press. Now, think about what that means. This was not an external leak engineered by aggressive paparazzi or hostile journalists. It was an internal red flag raised by someone inside the palace structure who recognized that the undisclosed trip violated every protocol William had been fighting to enforce. William was not reacting in panic to a public relations nightmare. He was acting on private intelligence delivered straight to his desk, giving him a distinct advantage before Buckingham Palace could craft a spin story. With the warning delivered, William's team did not rely on verbal assurances or casual explanations. They started pulling records, and what they uncovered was an astonishingly simple mistake that brought the entire arrangement crashing down into the public eye. Now, watch how a simple routine record opened up the entire investigation. You might think maritime registry logs sound like the driest legal documents imaginable, but in this case, they proved to be the smoking gun. The entire thread began unraveling because of a single, reckless moment on social media. An individual accompanying the royal party briefly uploaded a high-resolution photograph from the deck of the yacht, before quickly deleting it minutes later. It was an attempt to scrub the evidence, but in the digital age, minutes are more than enough. Independent investigators and eagle-eyed analysts took the background landmarks from that deleted photograph and cross-referenced them with automated AI's vessel tracking databases and public maritime registry filings. Within hours, they had positively identified the Esperanza 3, mapped its exact cruising coordinates, and established its port history. Once the vessel's official identity was confirmed, journalists and palace auditors could work backward with surgical precision. They pulled the port entrance and departure logs, cross-checked passenger manifests, and began mapping the network of individuals tied to the yacht's Luxembourg ownership framework. What started as a scrubbed social media photo quickly turned into a comprehensive paper trail connecting corporate entities to royal patronage organizations. When the press finally started asking pointed questions, the responses coming out of Camilla's office only made the situation significantly worse. Representatives for the Queen Consort attempted to brush the matter aside, describing the journey as a purely private vacation that required no public accounting or official comment. On the surface, that sounds like standard palace procedure. Senior royals take personal holidays all the time, and they are certainly entitled to privacy when off duty. But here is where that explanation completely breaks down under scrutiny. Standard royal transparency rules explicitly state that any significant gifts, travel accommodations, or commercial hospitality must be declared on the official financial disclosures, regardless of whether they occur during working hours or personal time. If this trip was nothing more than an innocent, routine vacation with personal friends, why was it completely omitted from the published transparency records? Was it an oversight, or was a deliberate decision made to bypass the disclosure process because everyone involved knew that listing an offshore-owned superyacht would spark immediate outrage? You cannot have a system of financial accountability where the rules apply rigidly to lower-ranking family members, while the top tier operates with complete immunity. That blatant double standard was the exact point William refused to overlook. But as his team dug deeper into the archival records, they discovered something even more troubling than a single unrecorded vacation. Okay, stay with me, because this is where a simple mistake transforms into a widespread structural problem. As investigators examined previous travel logs, they discovered that this was not the first time the Queen Consort had boarded that specific vessel. Reports revealed that Camilla had taken a vacation on the very same Esperanza 3 on a prior occasion, dating as far back as 2023. And just like the 2026 trip, that earlier voyage was nowhere to be found on any public disclosure form or official transparency log. It had been handled quietly behind closed doors, discussed in hushed tones among a select group of aides, and quietly swept under the rug without a single document being filed. This discovery completely altered the nature of the confrontation. William was no longer dealing with an isolated error in judgment or a single bad decision by a communications team. He was looking at an established multi-year pattern of accepting elite corporate hospitality completely off the books. It revealed a deep-seated culture of entitlement that assumed if something was kept quiet enough, the rules simply did not apply. For a prince who is actively preparing to take the throne and knows that the survival of the modern monarchy depends entirely on public credibility, this repeated non-compliance was unacceptable. He was not just frustrated by the headlines. He was infuriated that institutional guidelines were being treated as optional suggestions. The stage was set for a direct, unprecedented confrontation, and William chose the ground where it would take place. Look at the choice of venue for that mid-July meeting, because it tells you everything you need to know about who was really in control. William did not travel to Buckingham Palace, nor did he request an audience at Clarence House. He demanded that the meeting take place on his own territory, inside Kensington Palace. By forcing senior officials and key figures onto his home turf, William sent a clear, undeniable message before a single word was even spoken. He was not attending a defensive conference or seeking approval from the old guard. He was asserting his authority as the heir, laying down the evidence he had gathered, and demanding total accountability from everyone involved. The atmosphere inside that room was described by insiders as cold, formal, and intensely focused. There were no pleasantries or attempts to soften the blow. William laid out the port logs, the registration papers, and the missing disclosure filings directly onto the table, systematically dismantling every excuse that was offered. He made it clear that the era of managing royal scandals through vague press denials and hidden favors was over. This confrontation was not just about a luxury boat. It was about defining who holds real power inside the modern monarchy, and how that power will be exercised moving forward. The revelations brought to light during that Kensington Palace audit sent shockwaves through the royal household, signaling the start of an internal purge that Britain is only now beginning to fully understand. That brings us to the end of part 1 of this deep dive. The evidence was laid out on the table, the line in the sand was drawn, and the battle for the future of the royal family officially began behind closed doors. But the real fallout from this confrontation was only just starting to hit the inner circles of the palace. If you found this investigation insightful, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to Prime Royal Central, where we will reveal the exact fallout from that Kensington Palace showdown, the operational powers that were stripped away, and how Britain reacted as the full truth finally leaked out. Prince William did not walk into Kensington Palace with vague talking points or emotional grievances. He arrived carrying a comprehensive dossier packed with printed financial logs, port entry registries, lobbying disclosures, and a detailed summary of the previous undeclared 2023 yacht trip. This was not a quick emotional reaction to a tabloid leak. It was a fully prepared internal investigation. William demanded immediate answers to 3 specific questions. Who knew about the earlier trip? Why had that information been kept away from the highest levels of the royal household? And what exact details had been shared with King Charles? Now watch this, because this is where the internal palace mechanics get genuinely unsettling. As William laid out the evidence, one palace official admitted that internal concerns about the vessel had indeed been raised in the past, but they could not explain why those red flags were never escalated to senior management. Another official confirmed that King Charles had only been given a high-level, generic overview of Camilla's travel plans. The king had been kept completely in the dark regarding the yacht owner's true identity, the linked corporate entities, and the potential lobbying conflicts tied to the vessel. The palace's internal reporting system had deliberately filtered out the most damaging details before they could ever reach the sovereign. To William, this was not just an individual mistake by Camilla. It was definitive proof that the entire governance structure was fundamentally broken. And rather than asking for advice, William issued 3 non-negotiable directives on the spot. First, he demanded a full written disclosure covering both the 2023 and 2026 yacht trips, to be submitted directly to the king's principal private secretary within 7 days. Second, he ordered an immediate, exhaustive review of all of Camilla's charitable patronages to identify any hidden links to outside commercial donors. Third, he mandated an instant, absolute freeze on all contact between Camilla's household staff and the yacht owner while the investigation was underway. That third demand was not a suggestion or a request for clarification. It was a direct executive order designed to isolate the situation, contain the damage, and assert complete control over the narrative. Okay, stay with me. Because the pushback from the top was immediate, setting off an unprecedented royal standoff. Camilla, speaking through King Charles, insisted that she had never intended to deceive anyone, and argued that the trip was simply private hospitality among personal friends. Charles stepped in to urge caution, warning his son that launching a formal, aggressive review would only validate the story in the eyes of the media and generate months of damaging headlines. Charles was operating from a traditional, pragmatic standpoint: keep it quiet, avoid formal investigations, and let the news cycle burn itself out. William, however, was looking at the long-term survival of the crown. His position was uncompromising. Failing to enforce the rules meant telling the public that accountability did not apply to the highest ranks of the family. When Camilla's office subsequently submitted a disclosure statement that William's team evaluated and rejected outright as incomplete, the disagreement exploded out of the shadows. It ceased to be a private family matter and turned into an open structural clash between the office of the heir and the office of the Queen Consort. Two competing centers of power were now locked in a direct battle over the rules that govern the British monarchy. To understand why William refused to back down, you have to look closely at the web of connections surrounding the vessel itself. The Esperanza III was not just a random luxury boat available for charter. It was held through a multi-tiered overseas corporate structure designed to mask the ultimate financial beneficiaries. One of the corporate directors tied to the vessel's management company had previously been named in an official UK parliamentary report examining foreign influence, offshore capital, and high-value property markets. While that parliamentary report made no finding of criminal activity or legal wrongdoing against the individual, the same corporate network maintained distinct overlaps with several royal charities and heritage initiatives. What you had was a single offshore entity intersecting with the royal family across three distinct lines: political lobbying records, charitable donations to royal patronages, and high-end private hospitality provided to the Queen Consort. Even if every single interaction was legally compliant, the concentration of undisclosed access created a massive ethical conflict of interest. For an institution that exists entirely on public trust and moral authority, the appearance of impropriety is just as damaging as actual corruption. Accepting secretive perks from individuals with multi-layered political and corporate interests made the monarchy vulnerable to accusations of pay-to-play access. Think of it this way. Consider how strict international biosecurity frameworks operate, such as Australia's notoriously rigid food import system. When commercial goods are shipped into the country, they must clear uncompromising regulatory standards, regardless of whether they were fully approved in their home jurisdiction. If a product fails to meet those exact legal specifications upon arrival, it is not held in storage or returned to the manufacturer. It is immediately destroyed at the importer's expense. If a company ships thousands of units without verifying local compliance beforehand, they suffer a catastrophic financial loss because the rules do not accommodate excuses. That precise regulatory failure is what played out inside the palace walls. Accepting luxury hospitality from an offshore entity without verifying whether it complies with your own institutional transparency guidelines is the exact equivalent of shipping unapproved cargo across a strict border. You cannot claim innocence after the cargo arrives at the dock. You either clear the regulatory checks before you step aboard, or you face the full institutional consequences when the violation is exposed at customs. And the consequences of that failure quickly became visible across the official royal calendar. In the weeks following the Kensington Palace confrontation, Camilla's public schedule underwent a sudden, noticeable reduction. Multiple high-profile solo appearances were quietly cancelled or reassigned to other working royals. Behind closed doors, her operational staff was subjected to a structural reorganization, resulting in a smaller team and significantly restricted access to high-level strategic briefings within Buckingham Palace. Her ability to influence internal policy was effectively neutralized without a single dramatic public announcement. At the exact same time, Prince William and Catherine stepped into the vacuum, dramatically expanding their public commitments and taking over key engagements that were originally slated for the Queen Consort. The shift in family dynamics was illustrated during a weekend gathering at Highgrove, attended by Charles, William, and Catherine, while Camilla was noticeably absent. Shortly after, King Charles attended a major London film premiere alone, with official spokespersons citing a sudden scheduling conflict to explain Camilla's absence. When you stack these events together, the lighter calendar, the restricted briefings, the reassigned duties, and the solo appearances, a clear pattern emerges. The operational influence of the Queen Consort was being systematically scaled back. What makes William's strategy so effective is how he executed this power shift. There were no emotional outbursts, no anonymous leaks to friendly tabloid reporters, and no dramatic public feuds. Instead, he used institutional process, legal documentation, hard deadlines, and formal audits to achieve his objective. This disciplined approach mirrors how William has handled other complex institutional challenges in recent years, including the formal removal of Prince Andrew from public life, the management of Prince Harry's exit from official duties, and the severing of commercial ties with long-standing family associates. William consistently avoids short-term PR fixes in favor of permanent structural solutions. For William, this confrontation was never simply about penalizing Camilla for a single bad decision. It was about establishing an absolute precedent for his own upcoming reign. The message sent to every member of the royal family and every palace courtier was crystal clear. The legacy systems that allowed privileged figures to operate without accountability are being permanently dismantled. The modern crown will operate under strict financial governance, unyielding transparency, and zero tolerance for undisclosed external favors. This philosophy was heavily shaped by the historical lessons of the past, particularly the institutional failures surrounding Princess Diana. William observed firsthand how secrecy, lack of transparency, and defensive palace PR strategies ultimately eroded public trust and threatened the stability of the monarchy. He views radical financial transparency not as an awkward public relations burden, but as the ultimate shield for the institution. If every flight, every stay, every gift, and every corporate relationship is fully documented and open to public inspection, there is no room for speculation, hidden influence, or blackmail. As we look toward the future, the long-term implications of this confrontation will define the next era of the British monarchy. While Camilla remains Queen Consort, retaining her official titles and appearing alongside King Charles at major state occasions, her operational authority within the day-to-day administration of the crown has been permanently recalibrated. And when the reign of King Charles eventually comes to an end, the institutional support structures tied to his office will dissolve. The future of the monarchy will belong entirely to Prince William, and his vision leaves no space for undisclosed privileges or unmonitored influence. Every detail uncovered in this investigation points to a singular truth. The image of Prince William walking into Kensington Palace, carrying a folder of port logs and financial records, was the moment the future of the monarchy shifted. He did not wait to inherit the crown to begin reforming the institution. He used a breach of protocol to enforce modern standards of governance in real time. The era of royal secrecy has come to an end, replaced by an unyielding focus on accountability that will shape the British crown for generations to come. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the real power dynamics shaping the British royal family, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to Prime Royal Central right now. By subscribing to Prime Royal Central, you help us continue bringing you unvarnished, high-level analysis of the stories behind the headlines. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for our next episode as we continue to track the evolving future of the House of Windsor.